Hello friends. You can support me by subscribing to my channel and liking my videos to be notified of new videos. Enjoy. Sometimes they say we have to work hard to get what we want in life. Yes, it's true, we have to work. But what happens when others strive for the exact opposite of what we want? Who will win? The one who can afford it, or the one who works harder? I don't know, but I've always worked my ass off to get what I wanted, and in the end, I always won. Still, there were some things I didn't understand. While I was trying to follow the right path, someone else was trying to lead me astray, and this wasn't the first time I'd experienced this. Only this time, my enemies were very different. My name is Emra. I'm 29 years old. I lost my father at a very young age. My mother and I were left alone. At first, everyone tried to help us and do us good. But over time, we realized that these kindnesses had ulterior motives. People were evil. No one did good without expecting anything in return. That's why I had to drop out of school. I didn't want my mother to work. I was still bringing in the money. Sometimes, I even had to open it. Sometimes I wore torn clothes, but I didn't let anyone take advantage of us. Time passed. I grew up. I made good friends. Thankfully, thanks to them, I was able to do decent work and earn money. A year or two after I returned from military service, my mother said to me, "Son, I'm old. Look, you have no one. What will you do on your own after I die? You can't be alone. You need to get married." Quote. Her words made me think deeply. I'd never thought about marriage before. All I could think about was my mother's health and our financial situation. I hadn't had time to think about anything else. My mother spoke again. "I want to see grandchildren too. You're my only child. You're my only possession. I don't want to die without seeing your happiness." Quote. As she said these words, I remembered the girl I'd seen in the park recently. I used to walk there every time I went there. The moment our eyes met, her face was etched in my mind. I would recognize her anywhere. She was a very beautiful woman, about 1.60 meters tall, with a slim waist and long hair, but I still didn't know her name. I wished I had a girlfriend who was so beautiful, charming, and attractive. As I thought about this, my mother placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "Son, is there anyone you've set your sights on?" I'll get up. "No, Mom, there's no one. I'm late for work." I said, "We'll talk later." Quote. I kissed my mother on the cheek and left the house. 2 days later, when I returned from work, I saw a shoe on the doorstep that didn't belong to us. When I walked in, I found my mother talking to someone. When she saw me, I immediately stood up and said, "Welcome, son. Look, we have a guest. This Hasib is my aunt's granddaughter. She got into university this year. She was staying with friends here." I was so upset to hear this. I went and picked her up right away. She said she'll be living with us from now on. The girl was tall, had black, curly hair, small eyes, and was a little skinny. "Welcome, Hasib. My name is Emra. If you need anything or have any problems, you can let me know." Quote. Hasib lifted her head from the floor and looked into his eyes, saying, "I'm glad. Thank you so much. I didn't actually want to bother you, but Aunt Adile insisted, so I came." Quote. My mother immediately interjected, saying, "Is that even possible? Of course you will. This was now your home." From that day on, Hasib started living with us. At first, I didn't understand why my mother had brought her home, but over time, I realized. My mother was trying to draw Hasib closer to me. One day, she said, "Son, keep this girl a secret. She'll go out. How many months has she been here? She hasn't gone out for a day. It's always school and home. She's bored too." Quote. "Mom, I'm very busy." I said, "We'll all go out together someday." Quote. Hasib was a truly reserved and quiet girl. My mother had talked so much about marriage and children around her that she had obviously gotten confused. I could tell by the way she looked at me, but I was still fixated on that girl I saw at the park. I had no interest in Hasib. She was a guest at our house. Looking askance at her felt like dishonorable. Months passed. I began to understand her feelings for me more clearly. Even though I treated her like a brother at every opportunity, it was as if I didn't want to see it. The biggest reason for this was my mother. I was angry at her, wondering why she would do such a thing, but at the same time, I understood. My mother only wanted me to be happy. Still, there was something she was overlooking. I didn't like the rebel. One morning, I woke up early and went to the park for a walk. I was looking for that girl again. After a few turns, I saw her. She was coming from a distance. Her hair had let loose and fallen off her shoulders. She was wearing a tight black dress, highlighting her curves. She was beautiful. Her eyebrows, her eyes, her lips, everything was perfect. This time, I couldn't take my eyes off her. No matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't work. She was looking back at me. As we approached, our eyes met. She said hello and smiled when she came to me. I was struggling to lose control. I nodded, smiled, and walked past her. I was too embarrassed to turn around. I had walked a few steps away when suddenly I heard him squealing. When I turned around, I saw 2 dogs cornering him. I couldn't understand where they had come from. I had been walking around the park since the morning. There wasn't a single dog there. I ran up to him. I drove the dogs away. His hands were shaking. He was very scared. I said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Everything's fine." He looked into my eyes. I couldn't speak. I grabbed his arm and sat him on the nearest bench. "You're okay, don't worry, I'm with you, don't be afraid," I said, his grip tight. His hands were cold. After a while, he recovered, but he still hadn't let go. I had to admit I liked it. "Let me take your hand in a minute, thank you. I don't know what you would do without you," he said. "You don't have to be afraid. These things happen here. Are you okay?" He said, "Yes, I'm fine." I said, "Now that he's come to, I'll introduce myself. My name is Emra." "I'm glad," I said. "My name is Gunnel." "I'm glad I did too. What a beautiful name I have." I said, "Gunnel Gulamzi." "Yes, my mother is Azerbaijani, my father is from here." "I'm surprised to hear that, but you said you were born and raised here, right?" "Yes, I was born and raised here. I occasionally visit relatives who go to Azerbaijan. The air, water, and people are wonderful there. Of course, this place is the same," he said. That day, we chatted. We tried to get to know each other. Everything was going very well. We exchanged numbers and quickly became good friends. But that friendship soon turned into love. I didn't want to waste any more time. "Why wait?" I said, and proposed to her. Neither my mother nor her family knew yet, because everything had happened so quickly. He got along so well with her that he didn't want to lose her, no matter what. Gunnel said with some hesitation, "My family is a little oppressive. I don't know how to tell them." I said, "Don't worry, you meet my mother first. Then we'll tell your family together." I took her home. When we got home, my mother and Hasib were in the kitchen. My mother said, "Don't be surprised to see me today." "What's up, son? Who is this girl?" I said. "Mom, you always tell me you'll die before you see me married. Here I am, I brought you to introduce the bride." The conversation had stopped. Everyone was surprised, especially Hasib. My mother came over after a short while. She hugged and kissed Gunnel. "Welcome, my daughter, come in." My mother called out to the kitchen, "Hasib, my daughter, make some tea." "Look, our guest has arrived," she said. Hasib didn't answer. After a while, she came into the living room with a commentary in her hand. She quietly put down the tea. Then I went back. That was the day with my mother. They got along very well. This made me happy too. We got engaged within a week. My mother didn't say a single negative thing, because she loved Gunnel very much. After we got engaged, Hasib told my mother, "I want to live with the girls now. Besides, studying with them is better for me," and left. After he left, I felt like a huge burden had been lifted from her. Because his presence was bothering me, I didn't know why, but I felt guilty. We immediately decided on the wedding day. We printed the invitations and sent one to Hasib. I wish we hadn't. A week before the wedding, Hasib started coming and going from our house constantly. "Even if my mother didn't call, I came to help you. Maybe I needed something." He was at home day and night saying, when I came in, he wouldn't take his eyes off me. He was constantly trying to get closer. But I definitely didn't want this. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Everything was fine. Of course, Hasib was also at the wedding. Our wedding went very well. All our loved ones, relatives, and friends were with us. Gunnel's relatives from Azerbaijan were also there. I will love them very much. They were friendly people. Everything went smoothly. There wasn't a single flaw. My closest friends were with them at the wedding. Thanks to them, I didn't suffer from the absence of a sibling. They did the best they could. Everything was great. A week after the wedding, my mother got a little sick. I took her to the hospital. When the doctor said it would be better for her to stay in the hospital for a few days, I was amazed. My mother hadn't even taken proper medication until today. Staying in the hospital would be very hard on her. From the day she stayed there, instead of getting better, she got worse. She was constantly crying and saying she ached all over her body. Even the injections didn't help. 34 That's how it went. On the last day, he got up and packed his things. "Son, come on. Take me away from here. I feel great. I want to go to my house," she said. The doctors were also surprised. The woman, who had been writhing in bed just yesterday, was now standing. She wanted to go home. After a few tests, the doctor said everything was normal and that she just needed a little attention. I brought my mother home. As soon as she got home, she went into her room. She didn't come out for hours. She wouldn't eat or speak. It hurt me deeply to see her like this. She had collapsed within days. She had become very thin. Her hair had suddenly turned white. I didn't know what had happened to her. All I knew was that my mother wasn't well. A month had passed since then. My mother had withdrawn herself day by day. She was eating very little and wouldn't leave her room. Her memory was slowly deteriorating. Sometimes when we asked her name, she'd say, "I don't know. Don't ask me anything." I wanted to take her to the hospital, but she refused. None of the doctors I called could give me a definitive answer. They claimed there was no medical problem. One evening, as I was wondering what I could do for her, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I saw Hasib. She was carrying a small suitcase. Quote, "What's up? Is everything okay?" I asked. Hasib said yes, everything is fine. Schools are closed for a few days. In the meantime, I wanted to visit my aunt. I know she's not well. I want to take care of her for a bit, he said. At that moment, Gunal called out from behind, "Don't keep your guest waiting. Come on, go inside." Quote, he said. I was surprised when Hasib came home again. She hadn't come by even once since the wedding. Now, it was strange that she suddenly showed up, carrying a suitcase. We had dinner together that night. We talked about my mother and considered what we could do. Hasib said, "Don't worry. I'll take very good care of her. She'll be back on her feet soon. She'll be even better than before." Quote. I said, "Let's hope it's as you said." I went to work early the next morning. I felt a strange uneasiness. Both my mother's illness and Hasib's stay with my husband were making me uneasy. I knew she had always been interested in me. I had a feeling of doubt. It was as if something secret was going on. I returned that day feeling internally exhausted. When I got home, I noticed the curtains were completely closed. I opened the door and went in. It was quiet. I wanted to turn on the light, but there was no electricity. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. Neither my wife nor Hasib were visible. The dining table was set, but it was messy. I had a feeling of something sinister. I wondered if something had happened here. Suddenly, I heard a strange sound. It was coming from the bathroom. I approached slowly. The door was wide open. I shined the phone light on. There was no one inside. Just as I was about to walk away, I heard the sound again. I went back in. The sound was coming from behind the door. When I turned on the light, I saw my wife. She was sitting behind the door, hugging her knees. She was rocking back and forth. She was mumbling something, crying. I put my phone aside. I approached and touched her shoulder. Her body was cold. "What happened, honey? Why are you like this? Where is Hasib? Did you have an argument?" I asked. But Gunal didn't answer me. Her lips were moving. She was saying something, but I couldn't understand. I pulled her to her feet. As I tried to pick up my phone and carry it toward the bedroom, my wife suddenly let go of my hand and turned around. She reached out into the darkness and said, "There." "Who's there?" I asked. At that moment, a voice rose up from the channel. The voice gave me chills. It wasn't human or animal. She said something in a deep voice I didn't understand. I shined the phone light into the darkness. At that moment, a black shadow seemed to pass by. My wife hid behind me in fear. She was holding my shirt tightly. I could feel her hands gripping the hood. I told her she needed to calm down. I started praying silently, but it seemed to be no use. I grabbed her arm again and took her to the living room. I sat her on the couch. I said, "Let me stroke her hair. Honey, what happened? What happened here? Please tell me." Quote. But she still wasn't herself. She kept looking left and right. She was frantically checking her surroundings. She looked as if she was afraid something might jump out at her. I sat next to her and hugged her tightly. I was doing my best to make her feel safe. "Everything's fine," I said. We waited, surrounded by a lot of noise. Suddenly, I remembered my mother. I turned to my wife. "Honey, you sit here. Let me check on my mother," and I stood up. Gunnel held my hand and pleaded, "Please don't leave me alone." "Don't worry, everything's fine. I'll be right back," I said. I walked towards my mother's room. I opened the door and went in. It was dark in there. I couldn't see anything because my wife had left my phone there. I called out to her and said, "Honey, can you please bring the phone in here?" Quote, he said. Just then, the phone light went out. Gunnel's scream shook the house. I ran to her and hugged her. "I'm with you. Don't be afraid," telling her not to be afraid. It only took a little while. Holding my arms tightly, she was taking deep breaths, trying to pull herself together. The phone had fallen. Only Aisha, driving through the window, illuminated the house. Just as I thought everything was returning to normal, I sensed movement in a corner of the room. I turned my eyes there. It was very dark. I couldn't see clearly, but I was sure something was moving there. I was alert. A few seconds later, I heard a voice. It sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. I stood up, picked up my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it into the dark corner. I took a few steps closer. I was shocked by what I saw. She was cowering in the corner of the room, sitting loudly and crying. I turned around immediately. I looked at the person I'd just hugged on the couch. There was no one there. I went back to Gulen in surprise. I grabbed her arms and pulled her to her feet. I asked, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" She wanted to talk, but there was no sound. Then she fainted, unable to bear it. I didn't know what to do. It was as if this darkness had penetrated my soul. I hugged her and sat her in a corner. I waited for the electricity to come back on. That night was the longest night of my life. She could neither move nor stir. It was as if something invisible was holding me. I hugged my wife and stayed there until morning. I opened my eyes with the first light of morning. Everything seemed normal, but my wife wasn't with me. I immediately checked around. It was as if what had happened last night had never happened. I walked to our bedroom. When I opened the door, Gunnel was sleeping in her bed. I looked at my mother, and she was fine too. I didn't dare go into Hassi's room. I hoped she was okay too, I thought. What had happened last night was a terrible nightmare. Maybe I had strange dreams due to my work fatigue. But this wasn't normal. Thank God it was the weekend. What I experienced last night had exhausted me. I needed rest today. I went to my room and changed. I lay down on the bed. I fell asleep the moment I closed my eyes. Even though I was asleep, I couldn't believe what was happening around me. I was aware of it. My mind felt awake. My wife had gotten up. I could hear her voice. She was muttering something to herself. Then she tossed and turned in her bed, and I got out. After a few turns around the room, she came to me. She touched my hair with her fingertips. Maybe she was trying to wake me, but I was too tired. Maybe she was trying to wake me, but I was too tired. I didn't have the strength to open my eyes. I wanted to tell her, "My dear, I'm very kind. Let me get some sleep," but I couldn't speak. She started running her fingertips down my back. I had never realized her nails were so long. They were quite long and sharp. After a while, her nails started digging into my back. It hurt. I was getting angry, but I couldn't react. I brought her lips to my ear. She whispered something incomprehensible in a tone of anger. I didn't know what language it was in. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed in the room. I didn't know where it came from, but it surrounded the entire room. My wife was damaging my body with her nails. I started to pray silently, but it was useless. Suddenly, I felt like I was in a dark void. I found it. Everywhere was pitch black. There was just a pleasant misty darkness. I heard my mother's voice from afar. My son was saying, "Help me. Get me out of here." I didn't know what to do. I ran quickly in the direction of the voice. I couldn't see where I was stepping in the darkness. I was focusing only on the voice. However, as I got closer, the voice was moving away from me. Maybe I was running in the wrong direction. Then I saw a white light up ahead. As I went towards it, black smoke covered the light. The sight started to make my body shiver. I was crying cold tears. The presence of that smoke threatened me. I had forgotten all the prayers I knew. I started to run, but the scene wrapped around my entire body. My hands, feet, and my entire body seemed to surrender to it. For a moment, I felt emptiness. That dark presence had imprisoned me. Then I suddenly opened my eyes. I was in his bed. My wife had just woken up. She looked at me, smiling, and said, "Good morning, dear. I guess you arrived late last night. I didn't hear you coming. I'm making breakfast. You get up, wash your face, and come back." After I left that room, I was still staring at the ceiling. The nightmares I'd been having since yesterday were haunting me. I took a deep breath and tried to gather my thoughts. I went to my mother's room. When I walked in, Hasib was sitting by her bedside. When she saw me, she stood up excitedly and asked, "How are you feeling today?" I said, "I don't know. I'm a little tired. I didn't sleep well last night." Quote, Nasib jumped in immediately. "If you'd like, I can make you some nice tea. My mother sent it from the village. It's a mixture of many herbs. It tastes a little weird, but it's good for your body. I'm going to make it right away," she said, and ran to the kitchen. I sat next to my mother. I stroked her hair. She had grown very thin. Her eyes were staring into space. I took her hand and moved closer to her face. "Mom, what happened to you? Please get well now. I missed you so much," I said. My mother turned her eyes to me. Tears were streaming down her face. She held my hand tightly and said, "Let's get out of here." It was the first time I'd spoken in a long time. "Mom, what are you saying? Where should we go? Please talk. If you know anything, tell me. For God's sake, he made you like this." I said, "Who did this to you?" My mother pulled her hand away. She pointed to a corner of the room with her finger. I turned and looked. There was only a blank wall. I turned to my mother again and said, "Mom, what do you see there?" "Here," she said. He spoke so clearly, as if he wasn't the one who hadn't said a word for months. My eyes filled with tears. "I'm begging you," I said, "please get well." Quote, at that moment, I felt someone standing behind me. I turned quickly, but no one was there. I looked at my mother again. I jumped back at what I saw. My mother's eyes were missing. Her throat had been deeply slit. Her bed was covered in blood. At that very moment, my wife's voice was heard. I turned to the door. Gunal was standing there. "What happened, my dear? Why are you screaming?" she said. All I could say was, "Mom." My wife approached the bed. I looked at my mother and said, "Don't worry, your mother is fine. Come on, let's eat. Then we'll bring your mother for breakfast." I took her arm and left the room. I turned around one last time. My mother was lying in her bed. I spoke to my wife about my mother. "She's telling us to leave." I told her, "Something's happening in this house, but I don't understand. One day, you entered your mother's room and suddenly started yelling. You think you're talking to her. Please pull yourself together. I know your mother's condition is upsetting you, but you need to get some rest," she said. My wife went into the kitchen. I looked at my mother's bedroom door. Black smoke billowed past the door, and the door slowly closed on its own. I was trying so hard not to lose my sanity. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. Then I went into the kitchen. Hasib came in with a glass of tea and said, "Be sure to drink this. You'll see, it'll be very good for you." Quote, Gunal said, "Come on, honey, eat your dinner. Then drink your tea. Go out with your friends today. Take some time for yourself. You've been so tired for a long time." Quote, "Yes, you're right. I need to get my act together soon," I said. I finished my meal and drank the tea my Hasve had given me. At that moment, all the weight on my shoulders melted away. It was as if what I'd experienced last night had never happened. I felt a strange sense of peace. I felt happy and energetic. After a while, I met up with my friends. I spent the day outside. I had fun. When I got home that night, everyone was already asleep. The house was quiet. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I went to the last man and lay down on the bed. I took a deep breath. Just then, I heard my wife's voice. After I mentioned the man, she started running her hand over my chest. I could feel her warm breath on my neck. An irresistible desire rose within me. I let go. We made love that night. Then she hugged me. She laid her head on my chest, and we fell asleep. When I opened my eyes in the morning, I felt more energetic, but something was different. My hand reached out. I wanted to stroke Gunal's hair. She wasn't my wife. It was Hasib. I pulled back in shock. She opened her eyes and said, "Good morning, honey." I shouted angrily, "What are you doing here? This is my bed. Where is Gunnel? Quote. Hasib simply said, good morning. I said, get out of here. You won't be able to fool me anymore. Quote. At that very moment, my mother's voice was heard. Breakfast is ready. Come on, he said. I paused when I heard this voice. I could no longer tell if I was living in reality or an illusion. I put on my clothes and went out to the living room. My mother was making breakfast. Hasib came after me. She was looking at me with confused eyes. Hasib said to my mother, Mom, who is Gunail? My mother said, I don't know, my daughter. Why do you ask? I don't know, Mom. Emra asked me, where is Gunan? He said, have you lost your minds? Are you playing games with me? Do you think I don't know what's going on here? What happened to Gunnel? What did you do to her? Mom, when did you get better? When did you get up? My God, I'm going to lose my mind, I said, and I grabbed 2 glasses from the table and threw them at the wall. While I was turning the house upside down in anger, my mother and Hasib stood in a corner, looking at me with strange expressions on their faces. Turn to them. I'm about to lose my mind. Someone tell me what's going on here. What's going on here? Gunnels. I asked, why were you in my bed last night? But they didn't answer. I was about to go crazy. I caught my mother's eye. She was pointing to a corner. Her face was pitch black, and she had a creepy smile. The same expression appeared on Hasiben's face. Seeing them like that made my heart skip a beat. I turned back to the table. I couldn't believe my eyes. My stomach was clouded. I couldn't stop myself from vomiting because there were dismembered human limbs on the table. In the middle of the table was a flayed head. I screamed and ran for the door. I went outside. For a moment, I found myself in a dark cemetery. It was a place I'd never seen before. Black-clad beings stood over the graves. They turned to me. They beckoned me over with their fingers. I turned to run, but my mother and Hasib were right in front of me. One grabbed my right arm, the other my left, and they were dragging me toward the cemetery. Just then, the call to prayer rang out. I woke up, startled, to my death. I was in my bed. I was taking deep breaths. So, what I was seeing was a nightmare. But it was so real that I ran to the living room. Gunnel was making breakfast. I went over to her and hugged her tightly. I couldn't hold back my tears. Gunnel asked in surprise, honey, what happened? I said, get ready, we're leaving. We hurriedly got ready before she could answer. Gunnel asked repeatedly along the way, what happened? What's wrong? Where are we going? But I remained silent. After a while, we arrived at the mosque I regularly attended. We entered the door. When I saw the imam, I ran to him and said, Ramiz Hoka, I have something to tell you. Please help me. Seeing my panic, the imam said, okay, son, let's go to my room. Let's not talk nonsense here. Ramiz Hoka was a truly radiant, kind-hearted person. I felt a sense of peace in his presence. I told him everything I'd experienced, everything I'd seen. My wife heard it there for the first time. She burst into tears and cried with me. Ramiz Hoja said, my son, there's obviously a spell or a curse upon you, but don't worry, it will be resolved with God's permission. Well, my daughter, do you experience anything like that? Gunnel said, no, I've only had a few strange nightmares, but I didn't pay much attention. My grandmother has taught me prayers since I was little. I recite them every night before going to bed. Maybe that's why. It didn't affect me much, he said, smiling. Masala, my daughter. May God help you. Now wait here for me. I'll be back in a minute, he said and left the room. He returned about 10 minutes later. Son, get up. I'll take you somewhere. God willing, you'll be relieved of all your troubles there, he said. My wife and I stood up. The Hoja walked ahead. We followed. He took us into his car. After about half an hour of driving, we arrived at an old house. A man over 75 years old opened the door and said, come in, my son, welcome. Come in and sit inside. Quote, Ramiz Hoka turned to him and said, these kids have a problem, sir. Solve it. God willing, they'll always be naturalists for you. Quote, the man said in a calm voice, don't worry, God willing, we'll solve it, and sat down with us. Come on, kids, what's your problem? He asked. I explained my experience in detail from the beginning. After listening, my father said, look, son, these things don't happen out of the blue or by chance. Someone has obviously been seriously messing with you. Tell me, Did you mention any bleeding or deep cuts on your body since you started experiencing these problems? No, I said nothing, but my body is very weak and tired. I asked the man, are you spending much time on the toilet again or spending long periods in the bathroom? I said, no, I don't remember. Maybe, but I haven't even noticed what I've been doing lately. The man nodded and said, okay, fine. Sit a little closer to me. My daughter, do you experience things like this? No, sir. I've only had a few bad dreams. That's all he said. The teacher said, okay, girl, you stay close. Just in case, let's be safe. He placed a bowl in front of her. He filled it with clean water. Then he recited something and blew on it. He took something resembling salt from a black jar and mixed it into the water. He held the bowl in his hands and turned it from side to side a few times. The water began to ripple. Quote, now dip your fingers in and out of this water 3 times, he said. We dipped our index fingers in and out of the water 3 times. Then he put the bowl back in its place. I covered it with a black cloth. He asked us to place our hands on the cloth. He said, put your hand over ours and repeat exactly what I said, letter for letter. We did just that. Although it was long and difficult, we repeated what he said. Suddenly, he pressed down hard on our hands and put our hands into the bowl. The water suddenly boiled, burning our palms. We quickly pulled our hands back. The teacher told us to look at our hands. When we looked at our palms, a strange symbol appeared. The symbol on my wife was indistinct, but the one on mine was so clear, as if carved with a knife. I couldn't believe my eyes. I asked, Hoja, what's this? The man replied, son, a spell has been cast on you. The person who cast this spell is someone who lives in your house. A young woman. Hesipe was the only one in this house. I couldn't understand why she would do such a thing to me. So, why did Hoja cast such a spell on me? I said, I didn't do her any harm. The man replied, what she did to you wasn't evil. It was a love spell, a binding spell. She was actually trying to make you fall in love with her, but the spell had reversed. It had now led to other things. They'd become amulets. I immediately asked, so, how do we get rid of this, Hoja? The Hoja said, don't worry, the spell she cast isn't very strong. It will be removed, God willing. Then he wrote a few amulets. I was to mix one of them with water before midnight on Friday and drink it in 3 sips. I was to mix one with water and pour it over my right and left shoulders while showering. The other was to be carried around with me. The Hoja told me, if you do these things perfectly, everything will be solved, you will be saved. But there was only one problem. This spell had begun as a love spell, then turned into evil. The evil would return to its creator. The Hoja, without hesitation, returned the spell to the enemy. He also wrote a protection prayer for my wife. He said that wearing it would be enough. I asked my mother, Hoja, could she be involved in these things? I asked, perhaps that's the cause of her illness. The Hoja said, let's see, son. The Hoja opened a book. His eyes widened as he slowly turned the pages. His expression changed gradually. He closed the book and took a deep breath. Then he opened it again. He closed it again. He did this 3 times, as if he was afraid of what he saw, or he didn't want it to be true. Quote, Hoja, are you okay? I asked what happened. The Hoja cast a very powerful spell. That spell is the reason for her illness. But there's even worse. Your mother has been their prisoner. And for a long time, he said. My throat tightened. The words wouldn't come out. I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. Ramiz Hoka said, I think we should go home. Let's see what's going on. That was true. We all got in the car and headed home. My heart was pounding the whole way. My wife was terrified. Her hands were cold and she was shaking. When we got there, the door was wide open. When we got inside, we saw that everything was in disarray. I ran to my mother's room. When I got in, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was in terrible condition too. There was a strong smell. The bed was ruined. Mud, dirt, and feces were mixed together. The sight was horrific. Gunal couldn't stand it and ran out. I was in shock. My mother was nowhere to be found. Hasib wasn't there either. It was impossible for the room to have gotten into such a state in such a short time. So, we were in someone's contemplation. We weren't aware of what was happening. The Hoka went in and examined the area. This place is full of spells. Staying here any longer is beyond us. Let's get out of here immediately. Call the police, he said. We did. When they arrived, they searched every inch of the house. Everywhere, they found animal carcasses, magic items, and strange objects that didn't belong to us. Everything was muddy and broken. Gunnel said she could never stay in that house again. We moved in with my in-laws. That's when we started searching for my mother with the police. After days of searching, a freshly dug, unclaimed grave was found. When they opened the grave, I experienced the biggest shock of my life. My mother's dismembered body was inside. The police continued their search, but for me, the culprit was clear. I never saw Hasib again after that. Her family, her friends, everyone searched, but they couldn't understand the news. They said she was missing too. Perhaps the return of the spell had struck her. Perhaps she had paid the price for her actions with her own life. A long time has passed since then. Gunnel and I have moved out of there completely. We live in a place where no one knows us or knows us. My wife is pregnant. We will soon welcome our child. I'm trying to forget everything that happened, but my mother's absence leaves a huge void in my heart. I hope she'll be more careful with people in my life from now on. I won't make the same mistakes again. That's the story, friends. Thank you for listening. I love you so much. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified of upcoming videos. See you in new videos. Goodbye, M.